Hello, everybody. Hope you're well. It's been a bit of a long week as I've got finals going on right now, and thank God the news this week is not going to be too long. Before I do the news, I just want to tell you I'm really excited for today's episode because I had the absolute privilege of talking to Mr. Jon Guerra about his new album, which is called Jesus. And, he's probably my favorite Christian artist working right now, so no big deal. But I am really excited for you to listen to this episode. I think you guys are going to love it. Now, for the news this week. In the music world, this week's big single has been from Lana Del Rey. We also got singles from Stereolab, Turnstile, Goose, Mark Pritchard, and Tom York together, Tennis, Shabuzi, and for our Christian release for this week, we got a single from Andy Gullahorn. It was not a particularly crazy week in terms of album releases, but what we did get was a new album from Bon Iver, which is called Sable Fable. And you guys know me. You know I am a soulful white boy. And a crucial facet of being a soulful white boy is that I think Bon Iver is one of the most unique and talented artists of the 20th century. And I haven't gotten the chance to listen to this album in full yet, but I'm trusting and hoping and praying that it's going to be great. We also got an album from Ken Carson. And then for this week's consecrated track of the week, I am going to select Never Enough by Turnstile. Basically, imagine hardcore that's groovy and doesn't have much screaming, just hardcore instrumentation. And the thing I love about this song specifically is the outro is like just a beautiful instrumental. I love a good ambient droning build. If you don't see the vision with this song, what I want you to do, if you're at home or if you're near a convenience store, wherever you are, go get yourself a Celsius Fuji Apple Pear or whatever it's called. And then stay with me here, okay? I want you to purchase it or crack it open and then turn on this song. And wherever you are, I want you to either start doing push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, or if you're near the gym or you have a gym in your house or in your local convenience store, I want you to start working out for the duration of this song. And then I think you might just see the vision. Then, in terms of music news, we have Coachella going on this week. I won't dive into all that, but it's got a lot of the big names from last year, as you might expect. Charlie XCX, Clairo, but also, your typical Green Day, Weezer. All those folks. It seems to be going well, though, I think. No major mishaps. In other news, Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA just got a music video that came out 2 days ago as of my recording this. And then in the film world, I'm very happy to say that the Oscars, the Academy Awards, are finally going to be implementing a Best Stunt Design award, which has been needing to happen since the dawn of time. Buster Keaton should have been getting these awards. And that award will be given out in 2027, which will mark the 100th anniversary of the Oscars. We are also getting a new movie from Wes Anderson, and that movie is called The Phoenician Scheme. It will be starring Benicio del Toro and several of Wes Anderson's other frequent collaborators. For anyone who doesn't know, I have a YouTube channel, and that channel is called Bradathan. I will link it in the description of this episode. But I have a video on my channel talking about my opinions on present-day Wes Anderson and how I think he's really just been making movies that are trying very hard to be grandiose and quirky and Wes Anderson-style movies, rather than trying to be emotionally compelling. So, I really hope this one doesn't turn out that way, but that's really just a matter of my own personal taste and opinion. So, The Phoenician Scheme, and that will be out in May. Anyways, on to the substance of the episode. Here is me and Jon Guerra discussing Jon Guerra's new album, Jesus. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Consecrated Media. I'm very excited for today's episode because I have the one and only camo croc wearing Mr. Jon Guerra with me today. Jon, thank you so much for being here. Hope you're doing well. You're on tour right now, right?
I am on tour. Yep. Just had my first date in Nashville on Sunday.
Very nice.
I leave for Pacific Northwest in about 4 hours.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you fitting us into your schedule for today.
Of course, man.
Before we get into the actual meat of your new album, Jesus, I just wanted to ask you about the album art because I really love this cover. It's really beautiful. I was just wondering if there's any story at all behind that.
Yeah, so the cover art was, it's by this Viennese artist named Daniel Domig, and he and I connected. I found his artwork at a retreat center that I was doing music at, and then he and I got on a couple video chats and really connected over our love for, I guess, Christian art or kind of faith-oriented Godward creativity. And so he had some pieces that we felt worked really well in connection with the album, and we picked one of those for the cover. And it sort of has this descending energy to it. It's upside down. The person sort of looks like a fetus, kind of small. The colors are both dark and bright. It felt very rich.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I think it complements the album really well.
Thanks so much. Yeah. And it's a little bit different than I think what I've seen in faith-based records. So I wanted it to be a little bit startling in that way, just to try to reacquaint people with Christ, with Jesus. He was a startling figure to encounter.
Yeah, definitely. I think it works well to have something, like you said, it is different from a lot of faith-based album art because it's so abstract and you don't really see that much.
Hmm.
I think that works very well. In my last episode, I talked about John Mark McMillan's new album, Cosmic Supreme, and that came out on the same day as your album. Both
Mm-hmm.
of those serve as sort of portraits of Jesus using the album as a medium to paint that portrait. And I was just wondering about how your album paints this portrait of Christ and how you came to this point of making it, because it's quite an undertaking, you know?
Yeah, it was born out of a personal desire to kind of become reacquainted with who Jesus was in the Gospels. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I just had this desire to sort of be reminded of who this person was when he was, walking the earth, and then who he is still, who his spirit, who and how his spirit moves in us, among us, through us, around us. And so I started reading through the Gospels and just kind of was reacquainted with Jesus in the Gospels. He was both challenging and consoling. He was a joy and confusing at times, and offensive, and also it lights our hearts up in ways that you can't really put your finger on. And that was just very generative creatively. I found myself singing through different phrases and lyrics, and yeah, then before I knew it, I had a collection of little fragments, and so I started finishing those fragments into songs, and then I kind of had the record eventually. But it was born out of a desire to just know Christ more, to encounter Christ more, and the songs came out of that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I definitely think it came through. And I would say personally, I haven't had as much time with it, but I would say it might be my favorite album you've made so far.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I really love it. It's really childlike and simple in a profound way.
Mm.
And I love it for that. So yeah, I think that definitely came through.
Production wise, I try to keep it very simple. I enjoy producing and I enjoy composing and making things interesting and textured and deep and layered. But I felt that for this album, the songs needed to be very simple and the lyrics needed to be more of Jesus and a little less of my own poetic response to that. So
Yeah.
you certainly hear that on the album. It's certainly my simplest production to date, and the songs are simpler, yet they're I think in many ways more profound because it really is just the words of Christ.
Yeah. Well, you said on your social media that you recorded a lot of this album before doing any demos or your vocal takes or anything like that, right?
So I wrote the album before recording it. Yeah. So what I meant,
Okay.
usually when I'm writing, I'm in my studio, so I have my mic set up and I just start recording as I'm writing. But I didn't do that for the Jesus album. I wrote the songs and kind of kept them in my head, I guess. Would write some lyrics down occasionally, but really kept them kind of living in my head for a long time.
Mhm.
And it was kind of a fun experiment because you're like, oh, am I going to forget something? But I didn't. And then when I went to record it, it was like I had all this stuff to record and to finally get out.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a fun experiment.
Gotcha. That's very cool. You've said in the past, or just about your music in general, that you tend to write devotional music, and I think that really comes through here because so many of these songs are just directly taking phrases from the Gospels.
Hmm.
Did you have any specific insight about how this album pertains to that world of devotional music?
Yeah, yeah. It's certainly another. I have described devotional music in various ways: less Sunday morning worship, more Monday morning prayer music. Because I think a lot of us, certainly I thought this, that if I wanted to be a musician who wrote about God and wrote about Christ and my faith, I had to pick those two lanes. I had to pick worship or I had to pick radio. And when my music didn't fit that, I felt like, well, I guess I'm done. I guess I don't. But that's certainly not true. So this third way, devotional music, is music that is it takes its cues less from a functional end and more from beauty. So a functional end meaning the church. The point of congregational worship songwriting is singing. So you write these songs so people can sing them. That's the point. If they can't sing them, then it's not really a great song, worship song.
Mm-hmm.
Radio, you write songs to get on the radio to encourage people when they're going through their day listening to the radio, whatever they're doing in their cars, wherever they listen to the radio. But devotional music is kind of more like beauty, and I would say beauty. The point of beauty is to put us in contact with invisible things. Thomas Aquinas defines beauty as goodness made perceptible to the senses. So we're trying through these very limited means that we have through sounds and sight and color and feeling to put us in contact with something that we know and believe is there, things of the spirit, the spiritual world, and put us in contact with God, frankly. It is a fundamental premise of Christianity that God is accessible to us, that we can encounter God.
Yeah.
God is not distant. He's not autonomous. He's actually, and this is kind of a radical claim of Christianity, that we actually can come into contact with God. How we do that is the big question, though, right? There's different Christian traditions that have different ideas about that.
Yeah.
But I believe, and I think it's many Christians throughout the ages have believed, that there's something about beauty that lifts our spirits to heaven. There's something about encountering nature in its majesty or a sunset, or the birth of your first child, or even falling in love. There's these experiences of beauty that kind of take us out of ourselves, that decenter us, that make us mindful of the fact that life is more than just what we can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. There's something more to it. And so that's what I'm trying to do with devotional music. I'm trying to put people in contact with something that's behind the songs, something that's behind the beauty. Hopefully that's the goal. It's very audacious, but I think it's possible. I think God created the world in such a way that he makes himself available through these very limited means. And so that's what I think devotional music is, and that's what I'm giving my life to, and that's what I'm trying to kind of, again, be somebody who communicates and is an example of maybe a different way.
Gotcha. That's very cool. I think you do it well.
Thanks.
It's a very fine line to do that without being too corny or too cursory in the content you cover in your music. But I've always found that your music has done that really well.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk to you a bit about just the sound of the album. It's really beautiful, and it reminds me a lot of Laura Marling's album from last year, Patterns, if you know that.
I haven't listened to it, no.
It's very good. It's very pretty,
Cool.
but it's the chamber folk orchestration sound of it is just really, really pretty. And I hear some like moments reminiscent of Fleet Foxes or Sufjan Stevens and people like that.
Cool.
And then I know on one of the songs you quote Bob Dylan's song "Gotta Serve Somebody." But I was just wondering if you have any specific influences that you were listening to, or like even beyond music, just any influences that went into this album.
Yeah, Sufjan's always an influence. That's a great catch. Chamber folk, yeah, I've called it Baroque folk in other times. My wife's a violinist. I very much enjoy, classical music, the aesthetic of classical music behind like a folk or pop song. So that's something that I've enjoyed, but I kind of touched on it already. I wanted the album to be, I wanted all the elements of the album to be understandable. The last two albums, I've had a lot of tones and textures that you're like, what is that? Is that a guitar? Is that a piano? Is that a synth? Is that a pad? Is that a string that's reversed?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love playing with sound. But with this, I wanted okay, guitar sounds like a guitar, piano sounds like a piano, string sounds like a string. And simplicity, really. It's something about simplicity felt right for an album about Jesus.
Yeah, I think that contributes really well to just the overall experience of the album too. It flows very well because of that.
Yeah.
Another question I had was just
Thanks,
that
man.
you're a parent. You recently had your second child?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
I was going to ask, has this album been heavily influenced by that? Because there's certain songs on here that are like you could use to teach scripture to a child or tell them stories about Christ. And I was just wondering if that's been a facet in this music.
Yeah. I didn't really think intentionally, like these are going to be songs I can teach to kids, but being a dad affects everything in my life so deeply. And the more
Mhm.
my daughters get older, the more I'm interested in, I guess, including them in what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Our family values are, revolve around this thing that Valerie and I have called healing beauty. So, what we're meant to contribute to the world as a family is healing beauty.
Mm.
So, beauty that kind of makes space for all emotions and experiences of life and brings God into that or invites God into that and lets beauty do its work. And, our kids are a part of that, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, our daughter's 3 weeks old, our second one, so she's doesn't know what we've signed her up for, but
Yeah.
she's very much a part of this. Our oldest daughter, she's sung on all the records and or some version. I just try to include her,
Yeah.
not because you know I need to, but because number one, I want to, and number one, it's like she's very much part of it,
Yeah.
whether they know it or not. And I love the fact that I can occasionally hear, like my oldest daughter, she's often comes to retreats with us when we're doing music, and so she's heard these songs over and over at concerts. And I remember distinctly the first time I played a song called "Who Is Greatest,"
Hmm.
and which is a song that she sings on. And after I finished playing that song, she looked over at me and gave me two thumbs up and was kind of like, "I love that one, Daddy," And I thought that was totally incredible.
That's really cool. That's a very awesome experience. One of my favorite songs on the album is "I See the Birds."
Oh yeah.
I really love that song because it's just a song of peace, and it really puts the whole world into perspective when you're listening to it. And it's
Mm,
during very tiresome, challenging times. And tell me if I'm reading into it too much, but I really like that song because not only is it written from our perspective, but that could be seen as Christ speaking to the Father,
mm,
which is really cool
mm.
because there's certain liberties that you shouldn't take when writing from the perspective of Christ. But we know that Jesus was truly God, truly man, and he suffered as much as any person. And I think that if you view the song from that perspective, it's a really beautiful, interesting dynamic.
No, that's really cool. I haven't thought about that, but I'll have to think about that for a bit.
Hmm.
That's a really I do think Christ in every way, what does it say in Hebrews? In every way understands and is our high priest because in every way he has experienced and knows our weakness and knows our is acquainted with our grief and our sorrow and is a high priest who understands and who is able to mediate between us and the Father. So
Yeah,
I certainly think he understood the feeling of goodness. Certainly in Gethsemane, he did, didn't he? The feeling of God, where are you? Can you help here?
yeah,
Though held on to faith, of course,
hmm yeah. Speaking of Gethsemane, that's my favorite song on the album.
Awesome.
Actually, I gave it the consecrated track of the week last week, which
Oh,
was a
cool.
very high honor.
Cool.
But yeah, the content of that one just really cut deep for me on a level
Mm.
that is just only music can really do.
Oh, incredible. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. But then to shift back to another song, the song Reckoner, which is a bit of a sonic and lyrical shift from the other ones at that point in the album. It's definitely written from a modern perspective.
Hmm.
And it takes this not character, but the person you presented of Jesus and it puts that in a modern context, which I really love.
Yeah.
And it challenges who we've become, the comfort that we're so accustomed to in this day and age. But is there anything you wanted to say about this track in specific, just because it's kind of stands out to me from all the other songs on the album?
Yeah, that one, it was really, uh, I was just trying to capture what it might have been like for John the Baptist to show up on the scene and to start challenging the norms
Hmm.
and the integrity of the religious establishment and start challenging the rulers who is in power. He gets himself killed because he says to Herod that he shouldn't have, killed his brother and taken his wife.
Yeah,
And he challenges the Pharisees, calls them, vipers and good. You think you have Abraham as your father, but your father's the devil. Like he was very abrasive. And what would that have been like? We're so used to it now. Oh yeah, John the Baptist, no one's greater than John the Baptist, born of women. He was kind of this wild guy who ate locusts and honey, and you think of him in kind of like the kids' cartoons or the flannel graph, and
Hmm.
we've organized him in our minds. But trying to imagine what it would have been like for somebody like that to just pop up on the scene after 400 years of silence, there hadn't been a prophet for 400 years, and suddenly this guy shows up
Yeah.
who's been living in the desert and with the wilderness and is kind of wild, and then he starts offending people and then starts baptizing people and then Jesus comes and gets baptized by him.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, whoa. He puts himself underneath the ministry of John the Baptist before he begins his own. And that just felt important to include about an album about Jesus.
Yeah.
That almost antagonistic spirit. Because I think we're so used to, again, Jesus being one-dimensional and the ministry of Christ being exclusively the ministry of consolation, which it is,
Hmm.
but it is not only that, because it is a ministry of love, and love is not only consoling, love is also
Yeah.
challenging and occasionally antagonistic. And certainly, if antagonistic is simply going against something, so if one is in a state that is leading to death and destruction, then it is loving to be antagonistic towards that state.
Mm.
And that's what John the Baptist was. He was zealous for the people of Israel and for holiness and for God. And he recognized that something had gone amiss and was challenging that. And that, Paul talks about he was kind of the voice of the law, in which the voice of grace and redemption and justification and forgiveness is then placed into. Because you can't really, you don't have ears for the ministry of grace until you've been condemned by the law,
Hmm.
until you kind of are right-sized by the law. And really that's what John the Baptist is. And so I wanted a song that just kind of was that. And I just kind of looked around, and I have a few songs about that are just honest about our culture and about our country and about
Yeah.
what I think the role of the church is and where we've maybe gotten it wrong. And I'm just one voice, but I try to be honest when I look out and write. And so that song was kind of just a way of trying to look out and just be honest, and then
Yeah.
just say what John the Baptist said, which literally was repent and believe the truth. And then he also said there's an axe laid at the root, like this is not going to last forever. Like the tree's gonna come down. So get out of the way, get off the tree, you know, turn.
Yeah.
And it also felt like that message was unique on the record, so I wanted the music to be unique. I wanted it to be a little bit startling. And by that point in the album, there needed to be a change anyway. Like there needed aesthetically, when you're going through it, you needed kind of a shift, and it just kind of it fit that role.
Yeah, it fits very well. I also, on the note of the music, I also wanted to add that I just love the harp section at the very end of the song. It's really gorgeous.
Cool.
But yeah,
Yeah, and I've been even playing with the harpist live at
nice.
some shows, and that's been wonderful. That's been a great
That's
a
really
great
cool.
joy.
Well, I guess this brings me to my last question, which you pretty explicitly already answer on the song Jesus, but I try to ask everybody who comes on the show, what does Jesus mean to you?
Hmm.
Because that really is the bottom line for humanity. If the truth claims that Jesus made are true, that has eternal consequences for us. So just open-ended.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to be able to answer that question here.
yeah, yeah. So really, Jesus is, I'm discovering in general, he's obviously the most significant person who has ever lived. If you're somebody in the West, at least, I guess I can't speak to Eastern
Yeah.
cultures, but in the last several thousand years, he's the most significant person. And he's somebody who never wrote anything down. He's somebody who was not the head of any large movement,
Hmm.
at least while he was alive. He spent the majority of his time not in major cities, but in kind of outskirts of major cities.
Hmm.
And he lived unto God, and he was God. I fully believe that, but I think sometimes that piece of knowledge we obscures the fact that he was also fully man, living a very obscure life, but it was a life that was unto the Lord, and God took that purity of a life and did and is doing significant, feels too small of a word, but he's literally upending the direction of the universe through this one obscure life. And
Yeah.
who he is to me, well, he is the one who has been there since I was a child, who's been calling me. He's the one who receives me now when I've sinned and messed up and come back,
Yeah.
welcomes me like a father. He's the one who challenges me to let go of my reliance on whatever it is, my talent, my savviness, my even knowledge of him. Let it surrender, continual surrender, and calls me to rely on him, calls me to take up my cross, to endure all things unto death,
Hmm.
um, as much as I can and am capable of. And he's the one who I think is waiting for me at the end of this whole thing and waiting for us. And someone I'm learning to love more and more. Someone whose love is growing in me. I know that I love him more now than I did 5 years ago, but I
Mm.
know that I don't love him enough, as much as he's worthy of, or as much as would be good for me, or as much as is necessary to be a full human being, to be a
Mm.
fully. And so he's the one who's growing more and more love in me.
Yeah. Gotcha. Very well put. Yeah, I agree and empathize with all of that.
Mm.
Just a personal question, unrelated to that.
Hmm.
I know you have the record for sale of this album.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to make CDs of this one?
Yes, we do have plans to make CDs.
Okay.
So the record will be is gonna we're gonna make them, and then we always make a few hundred CDs.
Okay. Awesome. I have,
Yeah,
well, you can't see it right now, but behind me I have my small CD collection.
amazing. Good for you. The quality is so great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love having my music in high quality.
Yeah,
But I got the Keeper of Days CD recently because you were having a sale. I've been listening to that one a lot,
nice.
but I would love to have this one on CD. So,
Oh, absolutely, man.
well, one just fun question I have before we go is, do you have any hot takes, whether musical or film or pretty much anything related that you would like to share with the audience?
Oh man, um, that's a great question. No hot takes. I'll take the moment to maybe plug a couple albums I've produced lately. There's
Okay.
an artist by the name of Nick Chambers who put out an album maybe a month ago.
Okay.
It's very good. I got to produce it, and he's a friend and a wonderful devotional singer-songwriter as well. And then Tennille Neda, who's a woman from Australia who I've had the privilege of producing her record as well.
Okay.
I'll just say check those out. Those are amazing. A lot of great music coming out these days, and goodness gracious, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Awesome. So everybody check out, you said Nick Chambers and Tennille Netta.
That's right.
Okay. And everybody check out Jon Guerra's new album, Jesus. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate you being here. And I believe that is about it.
Thanks so much for having me, Bradley.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, brother. Peace.
This has been Consecrated Media. Did you enjoy this episode? Want to hear more of this? Please let me know by leaving your rating or review wherever you get your podcasts, and feel free to interact with me over on Instagram at consecrated.media. And everybody, keep it snazzy.